Senator Cruz made the comment about Obergefell being wrongly decided. And this, by the way, let me just show you the clip that went viral, the cherry-picked 18-second clip.
In Obergefell, the court said, no, we know better than you guys do, and now every state must sanction and permit gay marriage. I think that decision was clearly wrong when it was decided. It was the court overreaching.
That's all. That's the 18 seconds. That's what the left caused to go viral. And like I said, Senator Cruz and I trended on Twitter for 2 days based on that 18-second clip. And that, like I said, that's great. I don't mind it. I don't mind it, because what he said, even cherry-picked, is not incorrect. But the full context of what he was saying was actually constitutionally and legally extremely, extremely pertinent to really even AOC's and Ilhan Omar's fake arrest or fake handcuffing outside of the Supreme Court, because Roe v. Wade relied on this substantive due process. And this is just a little bit more of the context of what the senator said. If you were in this role as an advocate and Obergefell was in front of the Supreme Court again in some way, what would be the vulnerability of this case? What would be the argument against this case, or the argument for overturning it?
So look, Obergefell, like Roe versus Wade, ignored 2 centuries of our nation's history. Marriage was always an issue that was left to the states. We saw states before Obergefell that were moving. Some states were moving to allow gay marriage. Other states were moving to allow civil partnerships. There were different standards that the states were adopting. And had the court not ruled in Obergefell, the democratic process would have continued to operate, that if you believed gay marriage was a good idea, the way the Constitution set up for you to advance that position is to convince your fellow citizens. And if you succeeded in convincing your fellow citizens, then your state would change the laws to reflect those views. In Obergefell, the court said, no, we know better than you guys do, and now every state must sanction and permit gay marriage. I think that decision was clearly wrong when it was decided. It was the court overreaching. Whether the court will reverse it, I will say, so in Dobbs, what the Supreme Court said is Roe is different because it's the only one of the cases that involves the taking of a human life, and that's qualitatively different. I agree with that proposition. That is fundamentally different. I will say on Obergefell, there is also, when a court is considering whether to overturn a precedent, one of the factors that the court looks to is reliance interest. Have people relied on the previous precedent, and have they acted accordingly? And in the context of marriage, look, you've got a ton of people who have entered into gay marriages. And it would be more than a little chaotic for the court to do something that somehow disrupted those marriages that have been entered into in accordance with the law. I think that would be a factor that would counsel restraint, that the court would be concerned about. But to be honest, I don't think this court has any appetite for overturning any of these decisions.
So the 18 seconds, the original clip that went viral, as you can see, it's not incorrect. That is what he said, but the context is also really pertinent here. Nonetheless, this trended all over Twitter, headlines all over the world. This week on CNN, on several of their primetime shows, they talked about this, and this even elicited an act of Congress on gay marriage. So why did this trigger the left the way that it did? Since it was a philosophical, legal discussion, it was not a political policy discussion. And the reason for that is because we, on the conservative right, I'm differentiating between the Republican Party and the conservative movement. On the conservative right, specifically, people on the religious right, so the evangelical movement in our nation, were correct about gay marriage at the time that this was a battle in our nation, whether it was at the state level before the Obergefell ruling in 2015. Those on the conservative right, particularly the religious right, warned that if government, and not just a government body, but if the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage by redefining the word marriage, which they have no authority to do, that that would be the beginning of a slippery slope in our country. Now, the word slippery slope oftentimes is used as an insult. It's used, in fact, it's a logical fallacy sometimes. And the left certainly made the most of that. They accused the right of engaging in a slippery slope fallacy. But it turns out that the right who warned that gay marriage would be a slippery slope were correct. The right warned that not only would it be a slippery slope if you allow government authorities to take something that exists, something that has a definition because it simply is. It's an institution that is. In the case of marriage, it's an institution ordained by God. Whether or not you believe in God, it's an institution ordained by God. And if you allow government officials to take a word and erase the definition of that word and insert their own preferred definition and then force that on you, force you to accept that and acknowledge that and adhere to that and perhaps even celebrate it, then where does that end? That's the beginning of Marxism. If you destroy objective truth, then it gives the government the authority to do everything. It destroys the idea of rule of law. It destroys morality. It destroys right and wrong. It destroys everything. The only result of destroying objective truth is going to be tyranny and dictatorship.